So Kevin, we've got a 2 foot thick, predominantly shale and slate stone wall, about 200 years old, and we can see quite a lot of erosion has taken place. So is there actually any technique of cleaning the stone, or is it just merely brushing and raking?
Well, yes. Brushing out of the mortar joints will be an important part of the process, but we will in fact need to get into the joints with chisels and various tools. We try to keep away from mechanical tools. The action can cause further loss of the fine stone pinnings, the small stones which are between the large joints. So we try to use hand tools wherever possible. The joints will be cleaned out, usually to a depth of anything between 30 millimetres, maybe up to 50 millimetres in depth, and by and large we try and clean out to a nice square back at the back of the joint, and then we'd use our mortar mix. Not always a hydraulic mix. In this situation it is a hydraulic mix because the wall is retaining earth, there will be a considerable amount of moisture passing through, and we want a mortar that will be able to offer a good degree of durability.
What other mixes would you use in other scenarios on external pointing on this type of walling?
We can use non-hydraulic, we can use non-hydraulic with pozzolans. The eventual choice, of course, depends on everything from location, the degree of exposure, the substrate material, i.e. soft stone, soft brick, hard brick. The mortar, if it's predominantly built with earth mortars, it would be a dreadful mistake to have an earth bedding mortar in the core of the wall and then repoint with an NHL5. A clash between soft and strong.
So here we can see a finished wall section, and this is mainly made up of shale and slate stone. And this textured finish here in the mortar joints, how's this actually achieved?
When we finish the joint, as it's been applied with the tools, it will generally have a fairly smooth surface. And of course, aesthetically, that's not a particularly attractive finish. And from a weatherability and breathability perspective, it's a smooth, closed surface, so it doesn't allow moisture to pass as well as it could. So we always finish the joint with one of these brushes. This is called a churn brush. And literally taking the churn brush, as the mortar starts to go leathery or starts to go fairly tight, fairly firm, we then get the churn brush and we literally bash against the finished pointing. But we don't, as is the current practice with many bricklayers, we're not brushing the joint to clean it up. This is a compacting and a texturizing tool. So it's quite a hard struck, it's not a tap, it's a well bashed and compact process.
So where we've got large gaps in the mortar between the layers of stone, I understand there's a particular technique of actually filling those voids.
It's not a separate technique as such, it's basically putting back stone pinnings. Quite often when you look at a masonry wall, you see big joints, large areas of mortar, and incorrectly a lot of people might assume that the masonry was originally built with wide open joints. But in fact they weren't. These joints were filled with small bits of stone which would help to break up the joint but would also support the masonry to make sure it was level and sitting correct, and these little stones were called pinnings. Now in the weathering process that we saw when we looked at the earlier pointing, these small stones of course weather out as the mortar is decayed and are lost and fall to the ground, and subsequently over the years people may repoint without putting these pinnings back, so we end up with the effect of large joints. But in fact the correct method is in fact to put back new stone pinnings and pack the joints back up, to break up the expanse of mortar, but more importantly to help support the larger stones to stop them rocking or moving out of alignment.